In this episode, the thinkers from the classical era of ancient Greece broadly accepted their country's musical debt to the Egyptians, whose musical practices they much admired, giving to the music a prominent role to gaining an understanding of the nature of the universe. Welcome to Music History Podcast by Viola Studio channel. A philosophical view. Ancient Greek philosophers, including Pythagoras, Plato, and Aristotle, believed that studying music was central to gaining an understanding of the nature of the universe. For this reason, they gave music a prominent role in education. Pythagoras of Samos, who lived from around 570 to 493 BCE, is generally believed to have been the first Greek philosopher to develop a theory around music and its importance in the universe. Legend has it that Pythagoras was intrigued by the higher and lower sounds that he heard produced by hammers of different sizes in a blacksmith's workshop. Experimenting with a monochord, a stringed instrument, he studied the relationship between the pitch of a note and the length of the string that produced it. He then figured out numerical ratios between the notes and theorized about how they affected the musical harmony. He later made a leap of the imagination from his theories about the mathematics of music to a possible mathematical relationship between heavenly bodies. Heavenly music. In Greek cosmology, the universe was believed to consist of a series of spheres with the Earth at their center. There was a sphere for the moon, the sun, each of the planets, and for the fixed stars. Pythagoras believed that there was a numerical relationship between these spheres that corresponded to musical harmony. Their movements generated what he described as a music of the spheres. He believed that this music was imperceptible to the human ear, but that it was nevertheless a sign of the fundamental harmony of the universe. Music and society. Music and astronomy remained linked throughout the era of ancient Greek civilization. Plato and Aristotle, the leading Greek philosophers in the 4th century BCE, were more concerned with the effect of music on society and on the character of the listener. Plato believed that formal musical performance was essential to the stability of the state. He described any musical innovations as unsettling the most fundamental political and social conventions. He was deeply critical of the idea of judging a performance by how much pleasure it gave, and believed the purpose of music was not to give irrational pleasure but to introduce harmony and order into the soul. Furthermore, Plato felt that an elite must uphold musical tradition against men of native genius. Ignorant of what is right and legitimate, he said that those being educated to become governors of the ideal state must not listen to soft or lazy music, but music that encouraged bravery and restraint. According to Plato, music is able to bypass reason and penetrate into the very core of the self, causing great impact on the character, because more than anything else rhythm and harmony find their way into the inmost soul and take strongest hold upon it. Ancient Greeks also believed that music that travels with air will enter the body via the ears, as gate to the soul. Then the brain processes the sound, which eventually will be transmitted throughout the body with the blood. This way the effect of the music will reach each organ and finally the soul. Even without any knowledge about biochemistry, ancient Greeks had amazingly precise view on this subject. Today we already know that the brain reacts to a certain type of sound with the corresponding bioreaction that is indeed transferred onto the body. In the Republic, Plato writes how a listener can recognize all kinds of emotions, such as soberness, courage, liberality, and high-mindedness, and ail their kindred and their opposites, too. When someone listens to music, eventually will tune to its emotional movement and go along with it. This way, a good music will not only move the listener, but move him to a good, ordered emotional state. Bad music can have the opposite effect by having insufficient or too strong impact, or by moving someone towards weakness or evil. There are further lasting effects on the personality. If a child learns to let emotions go in a measured way, according to good music, feeling good will also have a proper measure and not go into extremes. In other words, good music can calibrate the feel-good level of a person. This sense for good then will extend to other areas, becomes natural even without knowing good or bad, in case of a child, for example. Finally, the last impact of good music is the way it prepares the mind for learning. Plato argues that music will arouse desire to know and at the same time will sharpen the perceptions. Aristotle agreed that good music would improve human morals and bad music would corrupt them, but he was more sympathetic to the joyous aspect of performing music. He maintained that the purpose of music was to instruct, to amuse, or to employ the vacant hours of those who live at rest. Aristotle introduces another key word in his unified music theory, catharsis. According to this understanding, music can be an instrument to balance a person's emotional state. Both ends of the extreme emotional states are to be avoided, and music helps a person to achieve that by moderating the feelings from the extreme. Aristotle also discussed the psychological impacts of the musical modes, or scales, used by the Greeks, such as the Dorian, Phrygian, and Lydian modes, named after different areas of ancient Greece, and their effect on emotions and character. Aristoxenus, a pupil of Aristotle, wrote a systematic theoretical description of music in his treatise Elements of Harmony. He was more in touch than his predecessors with the practice of playing music and had a different view of musical intervals, harmony, and rhythm. Aristoxenus felt that the only way to gain knowledge of music was to listen to it and memorize it, basing his understanding of music on the truth of the ear. Ptolemy of Alexandria. The last major Greek contribution to musical theory was made by Ptolemy, an important thinker who lived in the Mediterranean port of Alexandria in the 2nd century CE. In his treatise Harmonics, he tried to reconcile Pythagoras' study of music, based on mathematics, with Aristoxenus' theories, founded on musical experience. He expanded Pythagoras' music of the spheres into a system of connections between musical harmony, astronomy, and astrology. After ancient Greek musical philosophies influenced European musical attitudes all the way through to the Renaissance. Muslim scholars in the Middle Ages and then European thinkers from around the 15th century, including the Italian Renaissance philosopher Marsilio Ficino, will preserve the works of Pythagoras, Plato, and Aristotle. Johannes Kepler, one of the founders of modern astronomy, will continue to believe in a fundamental harmony of the universe as revealed in music, and blended musical theory with his calculations of planetary motion. Thank you for listening to Music History Podcast by Viola Studio channel. Please leave us your comments and opinions.